Welcome to the Music Production Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Funk. And right now you're hearing music from my Accordion and Beyond Ableton Live Pack. It's a collection of 4 instrument racks with 42 presets, all made from samples of a 1960s vintage Musy Corvette accordion. All the music you're hearing right now, including the percussion, is made from samples of an accordion. And those are made into instruments you can use in your own music. Now, while this stuff you're hearing right now is rather exotic and interesting and takes the accordion to new levels, hence the Beyond part of the pack, I've also got more traditional sounds like this. And you can hear now, you can also reproduce some pretty accurate accordion sounds. You can get the Accordion and Beyond Ableton Live Pack by going to brianfunk.com. And there's also a free version that has just the accordion itself that you can get at my site, brianfunk.com, or by checking the show notes for this episode. Thanks a lot and enjoy the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Music Production Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Funk, and this is the show about all things making music. And today I have Zack Zarrillo with me. He's the co-founder of Alternate Side, the co-owner of Bad Timing Records, and the co-owner of Hello Donuts, which is another interesting surprise that I found in looking up about him. He's going to talk to us about promoting, especially in the alternative rock arena, but I think a lot of this will apply to any kind of music that a person might be making. Some of the new ways things are going down through TikTok, Spotify, and all that. So Zach, welcome to the show, man. Good to have you.
It's great to be here. Yes, the donuts are unlike the other thing, certainly.
Yeah.
Though less different maybe than you would think.
Yeah, I was going to say, that was going to be something I'd ask you at some point, if there's some unusual connections. Maybe I'll ask you just to tell us a little bit about what you do with Alternate Side to get that set up. But that is a question I have for you.
Yeah,
things
no problem.
Connect in odd ways.
Yeah. So it's great to be here. I live in Philadelphia. I've worked in music for around, I guess, 10, 15 years at this point. I co-own Alternate Side with my partner, Vanj, who lives in Nashville. And we are what we like to call a full-service artist management company, which to us means we do the things a normal manager would do for an artist, which, can be anywhere from the most menial to booking a flight to, the most exciting, getting a big record deal, creating a great rollout, hopefully getting a gold record and all that kind of awesome stuff. But full service to us means, as the music industry has transformed with the internet, right? There's so much more that an artist really needs now in modern times. So we also have a digital distribution company that has preferred rates and relationships with places like Spotify and Apple Music, then going through your own distributor like TuneCore or CD Baby. We have a publishing arm where that gives our artists the best rates to get their publishing income, etc. We try to do a lot of things on top for our artists to make sure they're getting the best service possible.
Nice. That's a lot of stuff that many of us have taken on ourselves that complicates the whole being an artist, being a musician thing. For myself, just getting involved in music has gotten me involved in everything from like website design, social media, to computers and editing video. And I mean, so many things just keep popping up. And it's got to be great to have some help with that, some full service help. Because sometimes I know myself, I'm like, when do I make the music? I'm just doing all the work around the music.
Yeah. So it's tough to balance. Some of our artists too are so involved. A lot of our artists, they're not punk, but Vanj and I, the artists we started working with, we're all kind of punk rock alternative artists. So that's a lot of our mindset, and quite DIY style. So even though a lot of the artists we work with are not necessarily in that genre anymore, a lot of their mentalities are there. And that's why we've gravitated to them or why the relationships work. And it's funny you say, like, when do I make the music? Because so many of our artists want to be so involved with like literally making the cover art or the music videos or being involved in XYZ, which, is actually quite helpful, because I like to say that I can't care about, no one can care about your music more than you do if you want this to work, right? And a lot goes into music, especially now, but it does get harder and harder, I find, especially the more successful artists we have. It's hard. It seems to be the hardest for those artists, the top of the success pyramid, to find the time to go make music.
Right. I guess it's that thing where you get forever, your whole life, to make your first album. And then the next one, the sophomore album, comes out real fast. And so you're cramming all that stuff into a shorter period of time.
Yeah. And not only that, but it also gets a lot easier to say yes to things that are exciting if you're an exciting artist. And we want to, I like to say, like, we want to get our artists to the level of leverage where they can say no. But you typically have to say yes a lot before that, and that can make it hard to get back to the basics of what made it all work in the first place.
Right. Yeah, that's a good place to be. But saying yes is saying no to everything else. Infinite true. Other things. So that's one thing I try to remind myself from time to time, because when things come up, like a lot of times you're simply flattered that anyone would want anything to do with you. This day and age, like, the beauty is we have all this access. We can do all these things. We can get our word out there on our own, make our own music, but then you have to do all those things as well. And with that comes a lot of other people in that same boat, where there's now a lot of opportunity to get your stuff out there, but there's also a lot of noise to, climb over.
For sure.
How are some ways things have changed? I mean, you're young. You've been doing this since you were a teenager, right? Involved in writing about music and getting involved in the scenes. So have you seen major changes?
I just turned 30. I started.
Happy birthday.
What I would say, thank you. I'd say when I started my career was really when I was 16. So, about half my life in here. So much is different. I started managing 10 years ago, though. So I started managing in 2013. Spotify did not exist in America yet. Like, Apple Music didn't exist. Rdio didn't. Like, Rdio was the first streaming service I ever used, if you remember that. That didn't exist yet. Like, it was so different. Vinyl wasn't, let alone what it is today. It wasn't.
Right.
Well, I started a vinyl label in 2013 as well, when I started managing, basically. And like, it was so small, right? Like, literally I could get vinyl in 4 weeks from Europe. Like, that's how quick it was. So much has changed about every part of the music industry. Instagram had only been purchased by Facebook a year before, right? Like, everything was different. Things couldn't be more different, honestly. And so when I started managing, it was really just alternative bands, and so much, literally all of our income really came from touring and merchandise sold on tour, not even merchandise online. By the way, back then we were selling t-shirts for like $15. So really different there too. And I would say the biggest, the shortest way to say it is that, like, artists can have more fully developed businesses now. Where back then it was really, at least for the artists that we worked with at the time, it was really just one market, right? Like, go on tour, and if you don't tour, you cannot make money. Because even e-commerce stuff was so much worse then, obviously. I don't know if Shopify existed back then. If it did, it was not what it is today.
Right.
There's no Apple Pay then, etc. So I think the biggest thing over time, especially really more of a shift from probably 2017, 18 to today, and obviously COVID kind of brought forward a lot of changes, is just being able to have multiple arms of your creative enterprise, and hopefully finding the right person, meaning a management, label, whatever, to really exercise that for you. Because every artist is so different. There's no, a lot of the artists I manage sound similar, but their prospects, their businesses, where that individual fan base's niche wants to live online or on tour, it's so much different than the next. We
get so much more specific now as we ever used to. I mean, it's starting to feel like for me, like there's no common references with the average person anymore, whereas it used to be we all saw that thing that was on TV last night. We all know what was coming on the radio or MTV, and it's really been smashed, which I think has opened a lot of opportunities, but also maybe
it's hard to
know if
have
you
that
think
water cooler music conversation, right?
yeah.
I mean, it has been probably the best thing ever for my career, right? Like the artists that I manage definitely could not have broken through without this specific time. But then I'll have good friends or colleagues be like, "Whoa, did you see this album release strategy or drop or the song? Have you heard the song?" I'll be like, "What is that?" And they'll be like, "You don't know what that is. You need to know what that is." And I'll look at it as something with like 7 million monthly listeners on Spotify, which, I guess at this time, which is also crazy. There's a lot of those type of artists, but at the same time, it's like, that's crazy that like theoretically, in reality, maybe 2, 3 million people have listened to an artist in the last 28 days. And I've never even come close to hearing about it. Right.
Yeah.
It's hard. Yeah. I work with a lot of those artists. I'm sure people listening, like I manage some pretty big artists, but I think it's more likely than not that they haven't been heard depending on the demographic or age of the listenership.
Do you think we'll ever see the day again of those like really big rock bands? Like you have a Blink 182 poster behind you, and
Yeah.
they were kind of right at the end of that, where late 90s is kind of when they broke through. There's just fewer and fewer, and I'm feeling like there's fewer big stars that we all know, and a lot more of people that kind of come by real quick, the flash is in the pan type of thing.
Yeah, I think it's probably better this way because it means that it's tough. Like I think the middle class of music has really been squeezed, right? In reality, I think there's like 4 classes of artists, right? Like it's like so low class. You're releasing music when you can. Maybe you're playing some shows a couple times a year, but this is not your necessary realistic endeavor or dream. Then there's like the low class where it's like, oh, you're trying so hard and nothing's working. But again, you have like a full-time job, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
There's the middle class, which has really been squeezed because streaming doesn't pay. Streaming pays a lot if you get listened to a lot, and a lot of artists just don't get streamed a lot. Then you have, to me, I think kind of what's been made of the Spotify era is that there's a new like upper class that is below the Taylor Swifts, or not even Taylor, that's below the Blink 182s of the world, right? Like there's artists that we are lucky enough to work with, and thousands of more, and that's really the difference, right? There's like thousands of artists now being paid hundreds of thousands of dollars a year if they own their masters, just from streaming. And some of those artists have great touring businesses or great merch businesses or great Patreon businesses, etc. But I do think you're beyond right that the odds of Blink 182 happening again, there was maybe 10 Blink 182s a year in 1999, right?
Right.
And now maybe there's 0 to 1 new ones, especially outside of like hip hop or pop music. That I think that kind of upper stratosphere has really been pinched as well. But in reality, I think there's a much better class below that. And that's great because that means more artists are getting paid a very livable or, wealthy wage. It also means that, instead of having one Blink 182, maybe you have 100 turnstiles. And that means that, 400 more crew members are getting hired, right? And like, there's a lot in that sense. There's a lot of other benefits in some ways. If there's much more of a demand for every 1,000 cap room in the country than there was 10 years or 25 years ago for arenas or amphitheaters, I think that's kind of a good thing. But I'd also then on the flip side, I think it's tremendously worrisome how difficult it is to make a living now in touring than it even was 10 years ago, because of not even the recession, but just in general inflation, and in general how much cost of goods have risen, healthcare issues, all of that kind of stuff. I think that has gotten a lot harder, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, I know I feel it from just a fan perspective. It just feels so expensive to go to a show, almost no matter who you're seeing, unless it's your friend down the street. It's that free show, but you can see it in just the prices of concert tickets. But that is really just one method, right? And you were mentioning that there's a lot of other arms here where there's other options for people. What are some of the more interesting ones you've come across that artists are doing that maybe they weren't able to do before?
Yeah, we have an artist named Kevin Devine who has a really successful Patreon that we started like 2 weeks into COVID. And it's funny, things were moving so quickly then that I think we started the Patreon on April 1st, right? So it had literally been like 2 or 3 weeks. And I thought it was like too late. I was like, oh, so many people have already started one. We've lost it. And then I remember a couple of months later thinking back, and I was like, oh my God, it was April 1st, right? Like we had so much time.
Who knew? Yeah.
That's been really successful. And I think we saw a lot of artists back then, and not even just artists, but writers, comedians, whatever, start Patreons and kind of not give it their all. And thus it never really became something where we really treated it as Kevin's job. Kevin's been a musician for over 20 years. We had a 20-year anniversary show for him in January. And his income has really been someone that goes out and tours. His music is beloved by a niche group of people, but it's never been something that throws off a lot of streaming income, right? Especially, even though he owns a lot of his catalog. So we were looking up and like, wow, how are we going to have you make a living? You have a daughter, you have a career, all that. And we just started the 4th year of the Patreon, and it has made him essentially a full-time salary these last 3 full years. And that's not something I thought was possible before for an artist Kevin's size, which is kind of doing 200 to 400 cap rooms across the country, right? Which is a totally really good business, but I wasn't sure if that would translate to make $300 a month, $500 a month, $5,000 a month on Patreon, right? And it's made a totally very worthwhile amount of money for someone living in Brooklyn to live off of. And that kind of, to me, was like a proving ground of that 1,000 true fans type of ordeal, right? And that was just really promising, and really like we work with a lot of young artists at our management company. Kevin's one of the few where it's like has a family, has a child, and when COVID started, it was real like, holy shit, what we have to make sure this artist is okay, differently than some of our other artists. And it was just such a relief, but also was a really exciting thing to dig our head into. Like, wow, how do we create this new business? Like, how do we make it so our patrons really respect that we are treating this so seriously so they continue to be here? And that's one of the more fun things we've had the ability to do, but also like gratifying too, because it literally enabled a livelihood in a different way.
Right.
So, I think Patreon, and not every artist is built for that, right? You might have artists that are much bigger than Kevin, but couldn't have as much patrons because the music is vapid is probably a rude word, but more ethereal, not like you're not super sucked in. You don't have this 20-year relationship with the artist.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So I think that's one great thing. It's also great for artists that can't tour, maybe for disabilities or don't want to tour, or mental health or physical health issues, right? There provides other ways of income. And then, I have a vinyl business as well, and we've seen vinyl, if you can kind of have it in-house, meaning you as the artist, outside of giving a large chunk of the profits to labels, be a really great source of additional income, kind of as a merch item more than anything.
Yeah, it's amazing what's happened with vinyl. And my band's record is right up there. We sent out for that to the plant in June of last year, and we didn't get it till the end of December. And that, I understand, was pretty fast.
Yeah,
compared
it's
to
tough.
what's
It's
happening.
still tough.
Yeah.
Our times right now are 10 weeks, which is really great.
Wow.
Um, we end up making vinyl for major labels because even though they own the plant, somehow we can get it quicker. But yeah, that got tough too, of course, during
Mhm.
COVID. But thankfully, it seems like it's settling down if it hasn't already settled.
Yeah. What is Kevin doing on his Patreon that you think is working so well? Is there something some sort of benefits he's giving the Patreons that are particularly appealing or unique?
So I think the what we're giving most, like the backbone of what we're giving is consistency, and what I mean by
Mm.
that is we've come up with great graphics, great templates that we reuse each month. So we have a calendar that we post every month and we stick to it. So our patrons know, one, when signing up, but also to entice to sign up. We do a couple different things and we've changed some of the tiers over the 4 years, but typically it's been Kevin does a cover song, a reimagined recording of an original song, and then we'll rotate in depending on the month, a live stream, a Q&A, tour pre-sale, um, either exclusive merch or first access to merch or vinyl, all sorts of stuff like that.
Mm.
We've done handwritten lyrics, or you get special pins or merch, etc. Um, and we allow our patrons to like vote on what song we're covering and give feedback, and it really makes them part of the process,
Mm.
right? Um, and we've gotten feedback over the years that, especially like in the first year of COVID, where a bunch of fans were signing up to different patrons to support the art Patreons to support the artists they like, that we were the most consistent. And like if we said a song was coming out on May 12th, it was coming out on May 12th, right?
Mm.
Or that there wouldn't then be 3 months without an update, yet you were being asked to pay $5 or $10 a month. We really treated this like we are clocking in at least once, 2 times a week to do this thing we agreed on. And we've been rewarded for that consistency, frankly.
Right. Always seems to be at the root of anything that succeeds. Consistency.
Yeah, look, artists are naturally tough to wrangle. I think was part of why this worked for Kevin and his audience is that he's a 45-year-old man and he knows how to like clock in, right? Where
Right.
if this was a 21-year-old artist, maybe it would be more difficult, right? And that also goes to his audience, where his audience maybe appreciates that more. They're being asked to pay $120 a year or something. And so they really appreciate, even maybe they like Kevin's music slightly less. Maybe it's like less meaningful for them to this other Patreon, but Kevin's really respecting their time and the other one isn't, right? So we're
Yeah.
trying to give as much value and as much consistency to really reap the rewards and to, have this steady, stable income.
Mm. And it sounds like the Patreons also have a say in
They
what
do,
happens.
yeah. And that's helpful for us too, because we don't want to just be pumping stuff out without feedback
Right.
and frankly, again, it keeps you there longer if you can vote for you feel like you're part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe Kevin covers an Elliott Smith song. We just did an Elliott Smith cover album. Maybe Kevin covers this specific Elliott Smith song, and your vote push that over the edge, and it becomes one of your favorite covers that you listen to for years, and you're tied to that in a different way now.
You're going to play that song and be like, I voted on that. And it was a real
Yeah. Or
tight
you're
vote
gonna be
that
like,
month.
you're gonna tell your girlfriend or your friend, like when you're playing it in the car, like, I'm a part of this Patreon. Like, it's good word of
Yeah.
mouth in the way too, and it's good social media help for us to draw people in. Where it's like, hey, every other Friday or every other month Friday, we do a live stream. You have until 6 p.m. to sign up. Or hey, I just put a vote up on my Patreon to which to do these cover songs, and it's like, oh, if someone didn't see that, they're like, oh my god, I'd love to hear Kevin cover Blink-182, which I would love.
Hmm.
That might be a reason to sign up. Right. So we're also trying to do things to bring new people in as much as we can, because naturally there's going to be churn and evolution of who can afford it. Not even, it's not that people necessarily aren't interested, but if you've been paying for the top tier for 3 full years, right, that's $15, that's $540 directly from an audience member. That's kind of amazing. So you can't expect people to always be there. So we're trying to cycle in new people as well, of course.
Mm-hmm. Those are some great ideas, and that's also going to help you grow because social media favors that kind of interaction. And forget the exact word they like to use, but whatever it is when you click and comment on things, interaction. But I love that it's there's nothing like when you feel like you have that connection with an artist, and it starts to become the thing where like you even said, like you just start to like him and what he's doing.
Yeah, you started there for the music, but now you're able to be there for him too, or whoever the artist is, and that's very powerful as long as you respect that relationship with your
Well, a lot
fan.
of my favorite bands and artists, I'm like behind them no matter what. Before they even announce it, or I don't skip the songs that aren't my favorites just because it's them. And I think in all the news that's going on now, AI, and there's all kinds of craziness going on with Drake, fake Drake, I guess,
Fake
dropped the
Drake.
song that everyone loved. And
Yeah.
a lot of people didn't even care too much that it wasn't really him, it sounded like. But there's going to have to be something that artists do to stand out from that. And I think something like what Kevin Devine, what he's doing, that sounds great. Where you can actually feel that connection. And I just think that's going to be the only thing missing at some point. I mean, the music is going to be so close to passable, at least. That if there's not that human interaction, then what's the point in going for the human-made stuff if the AI stuff is right there with it?
Yeah, and I think you can even remove the AI conversation, right? And just be like, there's so many real artists now, and
That's true too.
back in, even before I was up, but when music got popular and more modern, vinyl, CD, cassette era of music, like you couldn't be doing anything else. There were no podcast, there's radio, right? It's like there's a lot less options. There were 4 TV channels. There was no or there were 100 TV channels, but no Netflix, right? And we're not just competing, Blink-182 isn't just competing against Green Day today. They're competing against every artist in the world at your fingertips of your phone, Instagram, podcast, TV, friends, everything. It's for, the AI conversation, I'm sure won't necessarily help that, but there's so much more to compete with now every single day in every field of the world, let alone artists, that it's really our goal, at least for our company, to really have artists that, tour successfully, because we see that as a leading indicator to developing a direct experience, relationship, care with the fan and the artist, because it's not just between a computer screen, right? Something likely the AI won't beat us at, right? Or it's like AI Drake at House of Blues. But that's a big thing too. Like I can't necessarily worry about the AI conversation because I need to make sure my artist is competing well against every other artist in the world, and Instagram and TikTok and Twitch, etc.
Sure.
There's so much to worry about, but also to aid.
I've had a few conversations like this about how today, just for me even, I check so many things. I check my email. There's blogs I go to. I check for new music. I check for new technology. I'm just checking YouTube. I'm checking what's going on. That it never used to be like that. Maybe I got like a magazine in the mail once in a while when I was younger. But it really is, that just goes to show that like it's every single thing out there is competing for your attention even more than ever. So to make those connections and give people something they can really identify with might be the only way you can do it with any sort of success.
Yeah, I think unless you get really lucky, right? Like you get a TikTok viral moment or whatever, that's the only way to maintain it. Especially, right? Things happen, like you were just saying earlier, a little flash in the pans, but to me, I believe at least that unless you're this supernova thing, if you're somewhere in the middle, if the only way to maintain, let alone grow, is if you can really have that personal connection. Otherwise you see an artist that has like 4 million streams on one song and 30,000 on everything else, right? And to me, that is the best indication of there's no real audience there. Maybe the song's good, maybe it went a little viral, maybe it got stuck in a good playlist, but no one's then clicking to the other songs, right? And we want to be working with artists that have fans clicking all the songs.
You mentioned TikTok, and in the email exchange I had, you're saying something that's a little different than a lot of people are saying. Everyone's talking about TikTok, go viral on TikTok, and how it's going to blow up new artists, and it has, of course. But you have a little bit of a different take on that. I was interested to hear a little more on your thoughts of just that whole angle that's been all the rage lately.
Yeah, look, I've had my fair share of like TikTok hits, which, like, God bless. I'd take another one tomorrow. I promised I would. But it's just not what we focus on. Like, I want my artists to be on TikTok. I'm not forcing it down their throat to be there. But I'm also not. I think a lot of people like in the world are like TikTok ruined the music. Like I have a lot of colleagues that, especially like from previous generation or like before streaming, before social media, that really believe like TikTok essentially ruined the music industry. And again, I view it more kind of what I was saying about this. There's this new tier of musicians that can really like make a living, often because of TikTok, but. It's so fickle. They clearly changed their algorithm somewhere in the later part of true COVID. That there's just there's this cycle. Like maybe because everyone was locked up at home, right? But all these artists just exploded with virality, right? It was like every day you could read a story or talk to a friend in the music industry where it's like, yeah, Sony or Warner or Universal just sent this artist a $3 million deal. They have one song doing 500,000 streams a day. That's over now. Like that was happening truly multiple times a week for like 12 months. And now I'm hearing about that like once or twice a month, which really goes to show you. And what changed is either we all went outside again or just TikTok decided to make other things more relevant in their algorithms. So I guess I don't remember exactly what I said in the email, but we can talk about that too. But just to say, I can't focus on TikTok. Like I have to focus on my artists making their music and putting them in the best position to succeed. That doesn't mean ignoring TikTok, but there's no real cheat code, unfortunately.
Right. Well, I think the nature of TikTok is sort of fickle to begin with. I mean, most of the time you're just flipping your finger up, swiping, and it's a platform that it's kind of unusual to spend more than a few seconds on a video. Usually it's pretty quick, which opens up a lot of new possibilities for artists, just as every format and every medium for music really has kind of governed the way the music is created. Just like radio, keeping things a certain length and the LP being a certain amount of time. But it kind of opens like these opportunities for just almost like jingly type of songs, like real quick things that evolve real fast and don't spend as much time developing as say like, a deep cut off one of Pink Floyd's records would.
Yeah, there are a lot of artists now that are literally like A/B testing songs on TikTok, like where it's like, hey, like they don't ask the audience, but it's like, here's a clip of this chorus. Here's a clip of the same song, but the chorus is changed or the melody's different. And I find that interesting to a degree. I also think it's like, what if you decided to post the B version when like Taylor Swift and her boyfriend broke up? So the entire internet went haywire that day on TikTok, and anything that wasn't Taylor Swift related just didn't do as well. Right. Yeah. So naturally you think like the A version of the chorus was the chorus.
Yeah. Right.
Like it's a little dangerous, I think, to like especially if you're not like really like a data or marketing pro to have a firm understanding of that type of stuff. But it is interesting. I mean, not 'cause there's other extreme versions of less extreme versions of that I find interesting. Like I just had an artist who's kind of a singer songwriter. She's young. She just finished her debut album recording it. And we don't have to be too precious about anything. So I've asked her to just start playing what she thinks are the best parts of her songs or like the most emotionally gripping on TikTok acoustically just through the summer before we start a rollout in the fall. And if any of those songs grip, if because it's a repeated amount of time, she's playing it over months, then maybe that changes our mind of what we think should be a first single or a second single, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe something bubbles up because it's like, ooh, this raw chorus or verse is really catching. Let's kind of bubble this one up instead of that one.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome, really. I mean, that's a really fun thing you can experiment with as an artist where you can, like, when have you ever had that chance before, to take like little parts of your songs and just to see if anything hits, if anything's catching interest and it's exciting to see what people think along the way. And I think it also keeps you showing up, and that's an intimate setting too, an acoustic song. So I'm sure there's a lot of people that start to just catch on to that as a thing that pops up from time to time.
Exactly. So I think there are some really good parts that you can use for yourself now, which is great.
And that you might as well take that positive outlook, right? I mean, because that's what's happening. And as angry as you want to get.
I try not to fight anything too hard, right? Like,
right.
You can, but I do, a lot of our artists aren't on TikTok because we say like, look, if you can't do a good job there, being there might be more harmful than good.
Right.
But yeah, it's like, you can't change how this is going now. I mean, I do think like TikTok may truly be banned, the app we know, in the next year. I really do think that's a possibility, not just like hyperbole, but if that's the case, it means like Instagram's just going to become that much more big, and YouTube Shorts is going to be that much big. Like that version of social media is here to stay now, at least for the next probably 5-10 years. Then another 5-10 years or less, we'll see another version of social media change, right? Like there's never an end point. Something is going to come up that comes after TikTok too.
Right. And that's historically just how it's been.
Yeah,
I mean,
of course.
To think we're going to settle into some sort of equilibrium where, okay, well, this is how you do it. I mean, no industry's like that. Why would you expect music to be that way?
No, of course.
Yeah. I think it's fun and it's exciting, and it gives you new ways to be creative.
It's a really great time to be a disciplined artist, I would say, where you can make your own artwork, or or you're like a gamer personally, which means you probably are like skilled at things like Discord, right, or Twitch, and that then is easy to like work into your music, or or whatever. But I think it is also a daunting time, right? Like it depends on it's different side of the same coin. Or it really depends on the artist you are, the human you are. Where you do, I think, to be a successful artist today, you need to be able to do more than ever, unless you really fall into it lucky. And a lot more kids are come up that way, right? Like you're handed an iPad when you're 3. Maybe you learn how to edit movies when you're 7 on iMovie on your mom's iPad, right? And then if you become a musician when you're 17, that becomes really useful, right? Where like that wasn't happening 10, 20 years ago because that like literally the technology just didn't exist, or the technology was too expensive to put it in kids' hands, right? But think about how many like 13-year-old kids editing together crazy TikTok clips are going to be able to make really good video content for themselves when they're an artist and they're 21. Just because they got so good at aspects of this. It had nothing to do with music, right? Like when I started managing this artist, Cavetown, at the company, he was 19, I was 24. And I was shocked that like he wrote, produced, mixed all of his music, made all of his artwork, shot his music videos. And it's just like, it wasn't a big deal to him. It wasn't like he was trying, it wasn't like being Michael Jordan and you have to, it's so exhausting to rebound every play when you're also shooting every shot. It's just like, no, he's a creative kid. And being creative, I think today when you're growing up, like truly starting when you're 3, 5, 15, is you're just going to naturally be a lot better at more things. It's a much more liberal art in a way. But for whatever reason, if you're not grown up that way, right? I think a lot of this has to do with, class and culture too. Like if you're working 5 days a week at your parents' shop because they need help with, money to, make ends meet, and you don't have that time to become an artist, you're working on music, but you don't have that time to like become a graphic artist too, then in some ways, and another 10 years from now, you might be less competitive. And I do spend a lot of time thinking about both sides of the coin because it affects too the type of artist we end up managing. Because you have to think that way now about like, is this artist like, does this artist need to be very reliant on having a label, a booking agent, a manager, etc., like traditional artists have? Or does this artist not need that because they can do so much stuff on their own? It's a very interesting industry right now, especially for like new waves of artists.
Right. And I think it's important for artists to remember that someone like you or a record label or anyone that's going to get involved with your work is investing in you. So you want to prove that you're somebody that you're going to carry your weight, and it's really interesting to see a lot of people coming out that are doing all that stuff. Even my nephew is 17 and he started doing a podcast with his friend, and he's creative, and musical, but I was really surprised at how good he was at it immediately, posting on social media. It was just like,
it's insane.
Like,
it's insane. Again, when I
you
started
just have a knack.
Cape Town, when I started managing Cape Town, I was like, this is so annoying. Like, like doing my blog.
It's just in the water they drink. So
yeah, doing my blog when I was 16, I was like, I was so upset. It was the only thing I could do, like for good and bad. But I like definitely couldn't have also been good at making music, right? It was like I have to choose one. Where your nephew, the next one, it's just like, no, like, I can do all of this. What do you mean, old man?
Yeah. Oh, I bet when you were 16 doing that, there were probably a lot of older writers that were like, he's got his website and like, I've been doing this for 35 years.
In fact, there were.
Maybe you got to encounter them a little.
Yeah, I did.
Let me bring you back. I wanted to ask you about the donut shop thing,
sure,
which I think is really cool. So that's how did you get into something like so? It's such a different world, right? Because you've been in music since you were 16, as you said, really deep in there, writing about it, helping artists. How does that come into your orbit?
Yeah, so. It was a joke. It started as a joke. I owned the business with 2 other people in the music industry, one manager and one's the lead singer of a band. And we were kind of just shooting the shit one day, and it came up as like, hey, like, what if we just open a donut shop? And we were all like, how hard could that be? Ha ha ha. We didn't make a business plan. We didn't take out any loan. We just were like, sure, let's go find a commissary kitchen to bake from. We'll find a baker, all this stuff. And then eventually, a couple of years later, we opened a brick and mortar store that is open 4 years this coming August. What was purposeful about it for me is, it is right to draw it back to when I was 16. I started doing this. Everything I've ever done has been so online, internet based. Like, yes, I have bands tour in the real world. Their vinyl exists in the real world, but it's all not literally where I am. I was very interested in having something be a part of a community. And not like to be in real estate, but to be a physical anchored place, right? And how different that would or wouldn't be. And a lot of like the work is somewhat similar to my day job. There's wholesaling product, there's inventory, there's staffing, a lot of food industry vibes are similar to music industry vibes. But the big difference is having a set community. Like we've really seen, customers come in for the first time, get a girlfriend, get married, have a baby. Like,
wow,
that's
in
such
4
a
years, that's
different,
cool.
unique, cool experience, right? Or have regulars come in every day, and it's very meaningful in a different type of way. I live in an area called Fishtown, Kensington, in Philadelphia, and the part of the neighborhood we're in is a little like it's continually being developed and growing, and it's really cool being one of the places you go for the first time when you move here, and then hopefully come back and back. And it's a real privilege to be somewhere people want to go multiple times a week. That's not something you typically see, even with artists you manage, right? Like, yes, you might listen to your favorite artist a couple times a week, but probably not going to 10 stops on a tour, right? This is a lot more affordable than going to 10 stops on a tour, but I'm not the artist, right? I am the donut shop owner in that sense. So it's cool to be part of a routine for people.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they work it into their life, and there's other options, bigger options, I guess, just like in the music industry, where, but people, I would imagine in a way, that are coming to you for your donuts are very similar to the people that are coming to your artists, and that part of the reason is they're not that. There's something else, something maybe that they connect with on a different level.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just very cool to be that we were able to come up with an offering and a culture, a vibe, whatever, that people have appreciated and stuck with, and growing it is similar. It's word of mouth to the music industry, where it's word of mouth, it's marketing, it's all this stuff, and thankfully, at least that wasn't like totally different brain side. But it's been very fun to have our hands in something a little more permanent.
Right, real world. None of your donuts have a Patreon, right?
No, but that's a great idea.
Well, Zack, it's been a lot of fun talking to you, man. Where can we send people to check out some of your work?
Yeah, well, if you live in Philadelphia, you should, or nearby, you should absolutely come to Hello Donuts in Kensington. And otherwise, if you go to zarillo.com, that's where you can find all the businesses I'm involved with, and alternateside.com is where any of the artists I manage you can find, and hopefully you like some of them.
Yeah, man, thanks. I appreciate all that talk, and a lot of great ideas for anyone listening to promote their own music, and just some angles and some just good philosophical approaches that you have that I think are helpful, and probably a reason why you're able to help these artists maintain a career like that in a very interesting and ever-changing time. So great job, man.
Thanks
Keep
so
up
much.
the good work.
I really appreciate you having me.
Yeah, it's great to talk to you. And thank you everyone for listening. We hope you have a great day. Take care. Hey, if you enjoyed the Music Production Podcast, please consider giving it a review on your favorite podcast provider, and share it with a friend, somebody that you think might enjoy the show and get something out of it. That would mean a lot to me. And if you want to check out more of my work, including sound packs, tutorials, etc., head over to brianfunk.com. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great day.